Hey YouTube, I'm here to talk about Queen Sugar. I gotta say, these people are genius. I don't know how they are able to get so much drama into it's not even an hour, because when you subtract the commercials, maybe you got 35, 40 minutes of the actual show, and they're able to get an awful lot of story in that small space of time. So we'll do the best we can. This thing opens up with they're at the mill. The fire is being put out, is still smoldering. So the family gathers at this mill, and Nova shows up. The family is still ignoring Nova. The only one in the family talking to Nova is Micah. Right? So she tries to say something to Charlie, and Charlie, of course, rejects her. They're still very, very angry at her about basically telling the truth. I mean, yes, it was tacky that she would do that without their permission, but it's not like she made up stories. All right. Arson people come over there and tell her that this was definitely arson. They've found, burned paths and so forth. And she asked them why it took them so long to get there. The fireman informs her that the fire alarms have been disabled. So they're dealing with professionals here. Next thing we see is Sam Landry. We haven't seen a lot of him lately. We've been seeing more of the sister. He shows up at Vi's place, right? Vi's in her restaurant alone, and he shows up. She's arranged a meeting with him. She tells him, first, he denies he has anything to do with this, right? Actually, him and his sister deny they have anything to do with this. But they are still in with this gas company. Vi tells him that it is time for her to call in that favor. So apparently she has something on him. At some point, she has done him a favor, a big favor. And now she wants him to take care of this situation with all of this vandalism and this arson and this ruining the restaurants and all the things that have been done against their family. She wants it to stop, and she wants him to stop it. And she's calling in an old favor. So we don't know what that is yet, of course. Must be pretty serious. Hopefully it wasn't a murder. He acquiesced. He says he'll do the best he can. She says, no, I don't want the best you can. I want you to do it. Then Charlie goes and sees his sister, Miss Frances. Charlie goes in there, and they have a bitch of a fight in there. They have a very heated argument there. It does become racial at times. Of course, the Frances tries to play it off as like she's wants to support Charlie and all that stuff. Charlie's not having it. She's extremely aggressive in this thing. And when it's over, she goes back to her car. She's exhausted. But Ralph Angel's the one that took her there. He's in a car, and he has everything that happened in the argument, which include all this, some confession. But we don't know that it's enough yet. But he has it all in his iPhone, right? Nova is able to talk to Mr. Prosper. Mr. Prosper, who is essentially part of the family. He's been a friend of the father since before any of the kids were even born. Anyway, so Nova, he is willing to talk to Nova. They're sitting at the restaurant. Vi is not there. And he says he wants to confront her about something that she put in that book as well. Nova put in the book that her father had killed 3 people and buried them on their land, right? Now, this is pretty easily verified. They can simply dig up the spot. But he says that's not the way it happened. Mr. Prosper was there. He said he did get into a serious fight with one of these guys. There's no mention of the 3 guys, though. Nova's book made it sound like he killed all 3 people. Because there were 3 people who were harassing her. Mr. Prosper says, no, one guy came back and he was going to do something to Nova. The father found him. They fought. The father beat him up very badly. And then he heard his wife singing to Ralph Angel in the house, and that brought him back to his senses. So before he killed him, he changed course and took this man to the hospital. Right? So I imagine there'll be some scenes coming up where we're going to see this, because all the people are apparently still alive. I mean, Nova's mother is gone, but these people he's supposed to have killed are apparently still alive. Mr. Prosper said when she saw him burying something in the yard, he was burying the things that were his clothes, weapons, everything that was bloodied. He was burying that. That seemed a little reaching. Why would you dig a burial site just to bury the clothes? But we don't know how big the hole was. All we know is Nova saw him digging on the land. So Prosper cleared that up. His father wasn't the murderer. Okay. Where am I at already? My God. Okay, next thing we see is okay. We see a scene where Darla is meeting with the new girl. I think her name is Disha. Disha and Ralph are getting closer and closer, right? When Darla hears about the fire, she's very concerned about Ralph. So she comes there, and she finds those two on the porch. So his ex and his current girl meet. They're kind to each other. Disha offers to leave, gives him some privacy. Darla says, "No, that's fine. I'm sorry for interrupting you." She just wants to check on the family. She feels very disconnected because most of the family doesn't really like her either, and she was part of them. So she hated to see the mill burn. This was a big deal to her, and she has nobody to talk to about it, right? Hollywood comes home. We'll get back to that. Ralph and Disha meet with the Board of Prisons, the ones who are in charge of his program for prisoners' reentry. In other words, he gives them jobs when they get out of prison. The program is in distress because these cops have planted drugs on one of the guys there, one of the workers there. So that is one issue. But the main issue they're saying is this fire. They're asking Ralph, how are you going to meet the terms of the contract? How are you going to pay these people? They have to have full-time jobs when they get out. That's part of their parole. How are you going to pay them if the mill is burned down? So they said it's going to be taken under consideration. It doesn't look good for his program. And then he's coupled with that, he's got to go back and tell the people, the workers, which apparently there's several of them now. First it was just a few. Let's say about 20 people. Have to tell them that now that the mill is burned, he's not going to have to work for them. He can't keep everybody. Although he does pay them all what he owes them. And that's kind of left up in the air. The board has not officially told him the program is closed. They're saying that he's under consideration. Right. This damn Landry seems to be working awful hard to defend themselves, that they had no parts in this. And Vi has made this Sam Landry promise to fix the situation. So I'm suspecting that there may be some kind of partnership, because later on he comes to talk to Charlie, and she rejects him as well. But the Landry seem to be very, very passive in this. And I'm thinking that maybe they're going to be able to work out a way to partner on this meal thing, so she won't be out of business, right? She does have insurance, but it takes a while to rebuild a factory. Next thing we see is the black farmers. Now, she's always had problems with the farmers. She has to keep them all milling at her mill in order to survive, right? They're kind of the purpose, but they're very resistant. It seems to like every time there's a tragedy, something happens, they want to walk away. And they're almost all of their land is all leased from the Landrys. So anyway, they've called a town meeting. Charlie's trying to explain the situation, that it's just a delay. Baby, stop. It's just a delay, and the ladies and this black lady is one of the primary farmers. She is not impressed, and they all collectively walk out on Charlie as she's still speaking. Mr. Prosper is there. She said it'll take some time, kind of thing. He's always got to be the go-between between the farmers and Charlie, it seems like. All right, so she's really stressed out. They have a meeting with the lawyer lady, Desha, and the family, and Charlie. And Desha is telling Charlie that she does not have enough evidence to prove. She has to have evidence, even with the recording that Ralph took. She has to have evidence to prove in court that the Landrys were responsible for this fire. The Landrys and this other oil company, right? She didn't have it. She's stressing out. Everyone is kind of looking, like they're all discouraged, and they're seeing her getting more and more wound up because she doesn't have the evidence. This is why I think, this is just my thinking, this is why I think that Nova's man is going to be a big part of this. Because he is an investigator, a private investigator. He has his own firm. He's from there. He's in love with Nova. I believe he's going to get involved in the investigation because what they need now is just what he does. Just my thoughts. Okay. Nova breaks down because the family, no one will have anything to do with her still. They won't even speak to her. She walks in a room and they walk out. She tells this to her man. Her man's Calvin over the phone. She breaks down about the family, about losing the family, right? He says where you're at. She's in her own house. So pretty quickly he shows up. Right? He shows up at her house. Which she needs somebody to be there because nobody's having anything to do with Nova. Mr. Prosper will talk to her, but that's about it. We see a scene where Vi, Vi is she's really the main one driving all this hatred. She's not a forgiving woman. She's having a very hard time with her niece, although this scene shows that she does love her. She's not ready to have anything to do with her, though. So they show Aunt Vi praying for everyone in the family, especially her husband, Hollywood, thanking God for him. And she does an extensive words about Nova. She says she can't deal with Nova at this point. But she's asking God to cover her and take care of her. So she still loves her, but she's still angry. That's what I take from that. Then Michael meets Calvin. Now, Michael has this thing with cops because of the way this one cop abused him and put a gun in his mouth. He's had a real time, particularly with cops from this St. Joe, these road cops. So he meets him. Calvin says, "Nice to meet you. I've heard a lot about you." He replies, "So you're the cop." Then Calvin excuses himself to supposedly make a phone call in the backyard. He gives them some space, and Micah confronts Nova. He says, "How could you be with somebody how could you be with a cop?" Basically, is his thing. And he asks, "Do you think he ever abused black people?" Nova says, "No, I know him. I know his character, and he's with me." He says, "You think he was ever there when when black people were being abused, black and brown people were being abused?" Nova is stuck, but later we see her put this to Calvin. And Calvin says, no, I never abused anybody. I never used excessive force. But he is a cop. So then she asked him the same thing Micah asked her. Were you ever there when someone was abused? And did you turn your back on it? So he gives his story. And he calls himself a coward because he didn't stand up many times when people were being abusive. And that was a big part of the reason why he left the force. He felt that he was a coward, that he was not strong enough to be a cop. He could not survive in that environment. So it was all tied to the things he had saw as a police officer, right? She seems to accept what he said. She touches his hand, kind of thing. Real subtle there. But she gives him a long speech about, not a long speech, but tells him about how you can't really escape your past. It's all part of you, kind of thing. But bottom line, he left the force for that reason. Okay, Miss Kiki. Miss Kiki's so beautiful. She's a pretty girl. Her and Micah were boyfriend and girlfriend. Micah got in a fight in the mall with some white kids. She didn't like it, and she had been angry with him. Some of her anger was not understandable why she held on to it so long. I mean, it wasn't like he did something horrible, but she was angry with him. But when she heard about the fire, she ran to his side. And now they're having an intimate moment, and she is asking him about the prom. And he said, yeah, I'll get a suit and get a limousine, regular prom stuff. But she said, no, we want to talk about the prom, plans for the prom night. So apparently Miss Kiki wants to do it. I don't know what else she could be talking about. He says, are you ready? She said, I'm ready to talk about it. So apparently Miss Kiki is a virgin, and she wants to rock her socks, rock his socks, somebody's socks, on prom night. So she wants to plan it. Planning is good. That means they'll have all of the things they need to be safe and for her not to get pregnant. Anyway, so he was kind of taken aback by this. He wasn't expecting this because they just made up. Anyway, last thing we see is, remember way in the beginning of season 1, there was a hurricane there, and Charlie, they needed the crop to come in, right? This happened right at harvest time. I believe Charlie was in charge at that point, and she had the workers go back out into the field to bring in this harvest, right? It was a tornado or hurricane, one of those things. Anyway, I believe it was 2 or 3 other workers were actually killed in this thing. Now, she couldn't have anticipated them dying, but she didn't. She was not a farmer. She was a city woman who came there, and she just was looking at the business side of, we need to get this thing, or we're going to lose the whole crop. So there's a news, or he comes in, I forget the young man's name, but her boyfriend, which was a successful relationship. It looked like it was going very well. But he found out about these farmers being killed and it being her order. She's the one that gave the order. He comes to confront her. Basically, that's kind of where they left it. He's very angry. She gives an excuse that he considers to be lame. And he walks out. That's the end of it. I don't know how they can get so much drama and so many stories in that 40 minutes. I just don't see it, but it's wonderful. It is wonderful. Sometimes trying to try to keep up with it all. But this is my favorite show, so even though we don't get the big numbers, I will continue to do this series. This is our show, people. I'll see you next week.